Hello everyone, my name is Michael Kinder. Today I would like to talk about the BP-EPI deal that passed near the time of my studies at UC Berkeley. I want to tie it in with the bigger theme of privatization and how this affects public universities, teachers, and students. I will begin by discussing the distinction between public and private universities and the concept of privatization. Then I will delve into the 2007 Berkeley EPI deal as an illustrative example of privatization, followed by an examination of its strengths and weaknesses. Next, I'll touch upon the 2013 student reactions and a case with another scientist at UC Berkeley that reveals the risks associated with blending public education with private interests. Finally, I will conclude with an overview of events in 2015, providing historical and a contemporary perspective on privatization. A private university is one that is not operated by governments, but whose funding comes from private donors instead of taxpayers. A public university, on the other hand, is funded by public means through a national or subnational government. In the U.S., most public universities are state universities founded and operated by state government entities. UC Berkeley, the university I attended, is an example of a public one. In higher education, public universities often have budget cuts, leading some to seek private funding through tuition increases and partnerships with private companies. When this happens, it is called privatization. Basically, the control of public entity or service is taken over by a private sector. In 2007, this happened in Berkeley. BP, otherwise known as British Petroleum, signed a $500 million deal with UC Berkeley to create the EBI Energy and Bioscience Institute to research biotechnology and biofuels. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was governor of California at the time, even attended the ceremony when the deal was made. But not everyone celebrated. Some professors were skeptical, and some outright rejected the deal. Robert Reich said it could be a feather in Berkeley's cap or a noose around his neck. Other professors thought that the public university was transforming into big oil university. Let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of this controversial deal, starting with the strengths. First off, you get $500 million. That's a lot of money to build nice facilities. Berkeley would now have a really nice bioscience institute to do research. And researching biofuels can help us to create and use alternative fuels to fossil fuels. This seems like a step in the right direction. However, there are some weaknesses. BP doesn't have an ethical past. They launched a coup to overthrow a democratically elected president in Iran in 1953. There's the Deep Horizon oil spill in the Gulf, and many more. So what about academic integrity? Should the university take money from anyone? Is there any ethical accountability with who a university takes money from? Also, the money doesn't come without a price. The university will face pressure to operate more like a private institution. Corporate priorities will dictate the research agenda. And a major fear at that time was that companies would not only dictate what gets researched, but what information gets released to the public. And indeed, BP later ended up having private labs on the public campus, which had nothing to do with researching biofuels. During the Occupy Wall Street era in 2013, students were still protesting against BP's presence on campus. One group of students formed a group called BP Off Campus and created what they called a guerrilla theater protest to attract the attention of BP's presence on campus and warn of the dangers of mixing public and private interests. I know about this because I was one of the protesters. The very next year, something very bizarre happened, although not with BP. Another scientist at UC Berkeley, who was working for a different private agribusiness called Syngenta, discovered that their chemical caused harmful effects on the endocrine system. First, the company tried to buy the data from him. When that didn't work, they hired other scientists to try and discredit him and his work. Finally, when that didn't work, they began to stalk him, track his emails, and even threatened his wife and daughter. Although this was a separate private agribusiness company, the fears of some professors and students that private companies would use the public universities to research what they want and try to prevent research that was unflattering or detrimental to their businesses came true, and more violently than expected. Finally, in 2015, BP decided to pull nearly a third of its funding and more in the remaining 2 years. At Berkeley, that meant ending some key research, the early elimination of 20 postdoctoral positions, and the layoff of more than half the support staff, and a search for other energy companies to help fund biofuels. In conclusion, the BP-EPI deal stands as a significant example demonstrating the repercussions of privatization in the realm of education. While privatization can result in improved facilities and resources, it also introduces certain risks. Private entities gain control over research, retain the ability to withdraw from agreements at their discretion, and can lead to contentious conflicts when public and private interests collide. Historically, public universities in the US, such as UC Berkeley, had tuition that was cheaper and had less private influences affecting their educational systems, but they have increasingly shifted more towards privatization. This transition has ushered in a greater influence of private companies with their distinct agendas. This influence significantly impacts how universities function, compelling them to align more closely with corporate interests, and subsequently affecting teaching methods and the content of students' education. Nevertheless, it's crucial to bear in mind that there exist different forms of privatization. Some of these forms may be more beneficial or detrimental than others. Thanks for listening to my presentation. Please scan the QR codes to see my slides and to read the websites and or watch the videos if you like. All right, thank you.